Becker, Tim Becker, Director of Horticulture, Remy Becker, Junior Horticulturist. We just stopped by the foundation, the nursery, just to say hi to everyone. Remy says hi. Hi.
Hi, Remy.
This guy loves native plants just as much as I do, mostly picking them and destroying them, but he's learning. We'll pass it over to Evan now. We just wanted to say hi.
Thank you, Tim. All right, as always, we start with a plant tonight. This is the desert marigold, also known as Balia multiradiata. It's a wonderful garden plant, blooms all summer, it's an annual species. Whoops, my calendar is happening here. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Blooms all summer and it spreads around your garden like crazy. It takes no water, and actually if you give it water, you can kill it. It's very drought tolerant, wonderful water saver. And I put some other water saving plants behind me. So we have two different prickly pear cactus, actually a prickly pear and a beaver tail, a Puntia species. We have the desert lavender, we have palo verde, we have saltbush, and we have one of my personal favorites, beargrass or nolina. Wonderful drought tolerant plants from the California deserts. Saving water is one of the main reasons that we like to promote native plants. And that's what we're going to get into in a major way tonight. We have guests who are going to look at water in Southern California, how it relates to people, our landscapes, and we'll try to just do a deep dive into the deep subject of water. So welcome everyone to Poppy Hour. My name is Evan Meyer, Executive Director at Theodore Payne Foundation. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Margaret Oakley. Hey, Margaret.
Hi, Evan. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Poppy Hour. So tonight I'm going to thank our sponsors. The Gottlieb Native Garden has supported the entire first season of Poppy Hour. And by the way, this is our penultimate episode of the season. The Gottlieb Native Garden is a flourishing California native plant ecosystem located just a couple of miles from Rodeo Drive in the heart of Beverly Hills. They have an incredible website and in non-pandemic times offer special events that highlight what's happening in the garden. This is a well of native garden inspiration. So do check out the GottliebNativeGarden.com. And we'll be featuring the Gottlieb Native Garden on our final episode of the season next week. So check that out. Tonight we'll meet staff from LADWP, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, who has sponsored this first season of Poppy Hour. LADWP promotes outdoor water efficiency through their $3 per square foot turf replacement rebate. Visit ladwp.com/landscaping for turf replacement rebate program details and garden resources. There you can access virtual garden tours and learn more about workshops to help improve your outdoor water efficiency, which we'll be talking about more tonight. You can also apply directly for your turf replacement rebate at SoCalWatersmart.com. And tonight we'll also meet staff from Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, who has sponsored the entire first season of Poppy Hour through their community partnering program. Native plants are the perfect candidates for Metropolitan's turf replacement rebate, available throughout Southern California. Check out native plant profiles, take a virtual tour of the Colorado River Aqueduct, and apply for water-saving device rebates at bewaterwise.com. So it's fun that we get to actually dialogue with some of our sponsors tonight. And I'd like to introduce Philip, who is director of Poppy Hour. Hi, Philip.
Hi, thank you, Margaret. And I just want to say welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again this Friday, all of you who are joining us on Zoom and also on YouTube. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. We do aim for a Poppy Hour to be conversational and interactive. So if you have any questions, please, you can either type them into the chat on YouTube or on Zoom. You can also use, if you're on Zoom, you can use the Q&A function. And we'll try our best to get those answered either live or in chat. I'll be the one primarily trying to get the questions answered on chat. So again, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And I'm going to pass it back to Evan.
Thank you, Philip. And again, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm really excited about tonight's episode. Of course, being in Southern California, water is such a huge issue. I grew up in New England and in Massachusetts. When I moved here to Southern California and started doing horticulture here, I was kind of blown away by how much water, what a massively important thing that is on the landscape. Versus the East Coast, it's mostly rain. And here, it's mostly irrigation that keeps our kind of standard traditional landscapes alive. We're trying to change that with native plants, and that's what we'll talk about tonight. Before we get there, TPF has gone through a lot of changes like everybody in the world during the Corona pandemic. And probably one of the hardest changes for us has been putting our volunteer program kind of on hold for the time being. We are very much a volunteer-driven organization, and I hope that some of you are watching tonight. I know we've had a lot of people participating from our volunteers. We really miss you guys. We're looking forward to bringing people back, and we're starting to bring people back in limited ways. And as we know more about the health implications, we'll be bringing more people back. And if you haven't volunteered in the past, but you're interested in it, it's a great way to join an awesome community of people and learn a lot about the native plants of California and how to grow them in your gardens. So I want to use this time to actually bring in our volunteer coordinator, Brenda Kyle. Brenda, are you here with me? Yes, she is. Hi, Brenda. You're unmuted now. So, hey, so I want to talk volunteers, but before we do, because this is a water-themed episode of Poppy Hour, what does water mean to you, Brenda? Especially as it relates to native plants?
I don't understand why people grow things they can't eat. That's what water means. Coming from a very rural background, my grandmother was Tepehuan. We grew up playing in the mountains of Durango, and the terrain is very similar. It's a higher altitude, but a lot of the plants I recognize, the guatamote, the different willows, the ceanothus, all of these plants have medicinal value in our culture. And there was nothing growing around my grandmother's house that did not have a value. Nothing was there for decoration. Some obviously had very beautiful flowers, but it was there for a purpose. So this whole Southern California lawn thing makes no sense, especially since there aren't any cows eating the pasture. I mean, it just blows my mind. My grandmother was a big fighter for water rights. She was 5 feet tall with a 10-foot shadow. And when she stood up straight, that shadow grew 2 more feet. And being as little as she was scary.
Yeah, I bet.
She was really scary. So there was one time where the water stopped flowing. Someone had blocked it upriver, and we lived downriver. And downriver is not always a good thing because you're at the mercy of whatever the people upriver are doing. Right. I don't know what my grandmother said to the man that blocked the water, but I remember she told me, go home. That was it, go home. And I ran, and an hour later, that water was flowing. I think she just stood up straight and grew 2 more feet in her shadow. But, it wasn't just because she needed the water. It was everyone that needed the water for laundry, for the animals, for food, for food, and all the plants that had the medicinal value.
It's precious. And
very precious.
Why would you take a precious resource to do something that is, when you can have beauty and you can have plants around your house that don't require water, as I just showed you guys all with this beautiful desert marigold. That's a really interesting story, because where I grew up, water was not nearly as precious, and actually water was kind of the enemy a lot of times because there's too much rain and your plants get moldy, and the smell of like wood fire smoke and mildew is like the most reminiscent smell that I can imagine, because that's what I grew up with. But here in Southern California, as in the mountains of Durango, water is precious. So thank you for that story, Brenda. I just was talking about how much we love our volunteers. What's going on with the TPF volunteer program?
We're slowly starting to ease volunteers back in. We've been trying it out for the past month or so, bringing in maybe 1 or 2 volunteers a day. We're ready to start our first Saturday events, only we're going to change it up just a little bit. Instead of first Saturday, we're going every Saturday. Instead of opening it up to everyone who wants to come along, it's going to be limited to about 5 or 6 people. Because that's what we can do to maintain a social distance and make sure that all our volunteers' needs are being met. We have a volunteer orientation tomorrow. The link is available on our website. So if you're not already registered as a volunteer, the application is available online as well. We have orientation tomorrow with another one happening in June, and also open house in June, a virtual open house in June to answer any questions anybody might have about volunteering with Theodore Payne.
Awesome. Yeah, and those first Saturdays, we tend to do a lot of weeding, especially this time of year. One thing that has done extremely well during the coronavirus pandemic is the mustard plants around the Theodore Payne property. They've gone nuts, and if you want to come and help us weed those first Saturdays, totally socially distant, you can meet some cool people with your face masks from 10 feet apart, and help us get rid of this mustard, which is all over our property right now. So Brenda, any final words as we head into our next segment?
I've been a volunteer myself for other organizations, and one of the they're all nature-based volunteer duties where I respond to fires and subsequent mudslides. Our water and lack of water drives our emergencies. So think about that as we go into the next segment, how important and what role water is playing in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Brenda. Thank you for what you do. Thank you to all of our awesome volunteers. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. It's really a lot of fun to be a volunteer here. We have a great time at TPF. So I want to go into our next segment here. We have a very special garden guest tonight. Margaret, would you like to introduce our garden host this evening?
I would. So it's my great pleasure to introduce DJ Peterson and Dan Nadeau. DJ has been an incredibly hardworking volunteer for Theodore Payne Foundation as board president for 3 years. DJ and his husband Dan have a wonderful native garden that has been 15 years in the making. It's entirely hand watered. Let's see, I'm gonna mute someone whose feedback was distracting me. So for several years in this garden, they've generously hosted many memorable Theodore Payne events back in the days when we could gather in person and celebrate native plants and the foundation. These are times I now feel so nostalgic for. Their garden is unique as one of the most urban landscapes to have been included on our native plant garden tour. And we'll find out more about the commercial history of this property. So the last year they opened their landscape up to the public for the garden tour was in 2018. And I think Philip will be putting the link for their plant list and photos of the garden. But it's great to check in and see what they've been up to since then. And I know that Dan will be primarily behind the camera and DJ will be doing the talking. So let's see if we can say hello to them and see them together here briefly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Filipino Town.
Hi, DJ. Hi, Dan.
Thanks for that great introduction.
Thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us on Poppy Hour, and tell us where you are in the garden. I heard that this is the part of the garden that Dan is responsible for.
Yeah, we just first of all, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary a couple of weeks ago, and I think one of our keys to success is we each have our own gardens. This is Dan's garden that we're in. This is an upper portion of the property, but elevated. It used to be this property was a doctor's office. We're on Beverly Boulevard, a really busy commercial street, a lot of professional offices. This was a doctor's office that was built in 1950, and this area that we're sitting in here was a break area. And we actually have pictures from probably the 70s of nurses in their starched white uniforms, just kind of like sitting, kind of smoking and taking a break in a much different landscape. But this is Dan's that he reclaimed as a native plant living room.
Which started with a lot of succulents, some of which are still behind me. And then as DJ started getting into the native, they slowly started to get incorporated. And now I'd say it's 95% native up here.
Yeah, and it's grown in, and maybe we'll start with a little tour of it.
Yeah, show us what's blooming and what's happening.
Dan's not gonna like turn the camera around.
These are the umbrellas are really special. You guys got them from a salvage site. Is that what they were?
This is from LAU. These are from LAUSD. They had a salvage sale right when we bought the house, and so we got these and figured out how to kind of. You've seen these in schoolyards and picnic tables.
Yeah, exactly. Familiar.
And you can see our building down here. That's the roof of our building, and then obviously downtown LA is right behind it. So it just kind of gives you an urban setting. And I love this kind of this view that you see here with the sages and manzanita, the lemonade berry, and then you kind of scan across to the kind of the urban landscape. And it's kind of this, it does feel like a very kind of intimate room that you can enjoy right here in the middle of the city. This is one of my first plants that I really got into. This is Cleveland sage, and it's blooming right now. I love the lemony smell. It's just really incredibly intense. And you'll see we have birds kind of just watching us right now. They want to get back and kind of enjoy their evening meal. And then over here we have white sage. And these white sage are all volunteers that we grew from seed. What we found is that this gravel actually is great growing medium, and the white sage love to grow and sprout in the white sage. And then right in between, this is one of my favorite kind of moments actually right now is you've got the white sage, you've got the Cleveland sage, and then you've got this hybrid sage in between with these, the kind of like the beautiful light purple flowers, almost like a desperado sage, but not quite.
Maybe a
and this is like
sage.
one of my favorite. Yeah, this is one of my favorite things. It's just how they kind of. I mean, they're performing for you right now with the way the branches are intertwined and the bees are just hopping from flower to flower. This is, I think, another great example. This is a Ken Taylor flannel bush. And it's got kind of a really bright yellow flower. It's almost it's really at the end of its growing season. But Dan planted this cactus. These paddle cactuses were salvaged from a friend's yard. They've been here for 15 years now, and they really are super happy together. And
yeah.
as you know, this is a water show. The key point is none of this is irrigated. These plants, now that they're mature, don't require any water. So Dan hasn't had to water these at all. And Dan's pointing out the hummingbird darting. The hummingbird wants to be part of the show as well.
Zoom bombed by hummingbirds. Excellent.
Love it. Love it.
Great.
So this, like I said, this was all at one time a cement slab, and Dan rented a jackhammer, cut up the concrete, and then kind of made these circles and retaining walls to create kind of distinct little spaces.
And tell us about the windmill that we're seeing. Right behind
So
you.
the windmill, I was riding the 14 bus down Beverly Boulevard back home, and there's a stop down the street, and there's a little windmill out in front of an office there. And I just stared at it, and I'm like, I want one of those windmills. So we got a little bit of a larger version, and appropriate to the show. It's made by Outdoor Water Solutions, although it doesn't pump water, of course. But Dan bought it for my birthday, and we spent a weekend assembling it and putting it together. One of the kind of the newest additions to our garden is the LADWP, and it's at the end of its little bloom. But I'm so excited we have one flower there, and it makes me so happy. And I planted it on this hill because my expectation is it'll run downhill and grow really big and then kind of almost crowd everything out. But perhaps it's also going to grow up and just kind of grow up the water tower, and then you'll just see the windmill kind of sprouting out of the top of the poppies at some point in the future.
We have some insight into your design strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of emblematic of this. This is the Vermontodendron. This is a flannel bush, Pacific Sunset. Loves it on this hill, but this is all really hard pan clay. It's really, and you can just see how it's just amazing how these plants have really enjoyed it. Zero water, doesn't want any water, but it's just the way it's just amazing. It's kind of surprised me how it's just kind of grown up. Like I said, we don't water, really irrigate, except when the plants are really small. And one of the things that I think happens when you don't irrigate is that, first of all, plants, they grow slower. And this is an example. This is Howard McMinn, and this was sitting here. We put it in the ground, and it was probably sitting here for 5 years, 7 years, not really doing much, maybe about this tall. It was maybe I got it as a 5-gallon. And then the last 2 years, because of the rain that we've had, it's just shot up all of a sudden. So it's basically responding to nature as opposed to irrigation. And we get to, and it's the same thing with this this is a big berry manzanita. It's also kind of just shot up. You can just see the light green, which gives me a lot of happiness to see that it's responding to the water from nature.
Did you have to, we have a question from Kathy. Did you have to supplemental irrigate during very dry winters?
Actually, that's a really good question. We have, for instance, a toyon out front, a very mature toyon. And when at the depths of the drought several years ago, it was dropping its leaves. And it was looking really sad. So we did some emergency interventions, and we did, and especially like this manzanita, we did give it supplemental water, but just with a hose. You can't water too much because you've got to stand there, so you can't overwater probably too much.
All right, I know we have a lot to look at, so let's keep moving. And the light dropped in your amazing upper terrace, but usually it's very sun drenched and
yeah, it is. The sun's going down here in this spot. I love another kind of element of native plants and letting things go a bit wild is the leaf litter and the plant litter. This is underneath the flannel bush, and it just drops thousands and thousands of flowers with different colors, and you just get to see them. And it's this is the season of the past, and interesting thing is no weeds will grow there. It's really great for weed control.
Huh, good tip.
One of the things our garden looks really thriving, but I think it's also important to point out that gardeners also kill a lot of plants. And this is my plant cemetery. And some of them just, maybe I didn't water them enough, or they didn't like the soil. But for what and they didn't make it. So there was an interesting idea, but ended up not thriving. So, and I'm not really interested in working really hard to make something grow if it doesn't want to grow.
Yeah, R.I.P. Salvia Winifred Gilman. That might be the only plant cemetery I've seen on the garden tour also. Just want to say.
You know, I go to Theodore Payne, Winifred Gilman. It's a beautiful plant, but for some reason it just doesn't like our garden, doesn't like Filipino town. So I gave up on it after several tries. But as you can see, the Catalina, the bush poppy, you know, it can be really hard to grow in some places, but it's just loving it here. And I hack it back pretty aggressively every year.
And
so Dan's showing you, we kind of like live in a very urban setting. Most people, maybe many of you have driven down Beverly Boulevard and you've blown past us as you're trying to get downtown. But we're a little bit set back from the street, but I'd like to think of it as a little bit of oasis for our neighbors to enjoy as they walk by.
Can you talk a little bit about that concept of defensive planting? Because I think that's something that it's a term that I haven't heard used that often.
Yeah, before we had a fence was set back, was much farther up from the street. And this wall right here was always covered with tagging and graffiti. So I planted this Vermontodendron, this flannel bush, which many of you might know is actually really itchy. If it brushes up against you, it just really is very irritant. So at first, the plant would get crushed. People would break the branches, but then the plant got big enough and strong enough, and now it deterred everybody from tagging the wall.
It's a good strategy.
So we're going to round the corner here, away from Beverly Boulevard, and walk down towards the other side, the eastern side, which gets a lot of morning sun. So we had the plant cemetery. This is the plant nursery. And I guess another theme of mine is I really like to propagate. We have a lot of volunteers. The mulch as well as the gravel is really great, especially this year and last year. We had just tons of volunteers. So I've got these Catalina cherries, tons of St. Catherine's lace or giant buckwheat, tons of lemonade berry, which I love planting in kind of forlorn parts of our neighborhood, little parks, and there's a rock street down just one block down that I'm planting. This is purple sage, the mounding sage. So this is my office is right here. So I come out I walk back and forth. So this is like I get to kind of pay attention to my nursery. Have Catalina perfume, Vermontodendron babies, which are hard to raise because these are easy to kill in a pot. A lot of deer grass. We started when we bought this property. I went to Theodore Payne and bought deer grass seeds and propagated them in our kitchen. And from those initial plants, now we have hundreds that we've just I've separated like this and just put them in pots. These are great in pots. I love these kind of, just as a kind of a little contrast. So this is our propagation area.
Amazing. Right outside your office door.
Yes. And then we get to walk through. This is my meadow.
Is this the moment when you should switch to Wi-Fi, networks? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, while we'll do that, I'll just kind of mention that I think it's so amazing that our board president propagates native plants from seed around his garden and then sort of guerrilla garden style plants them around, this downtown LA adjacent neighborhood into cracks in concrete and parking lots and all these places. So one of my dreams is that my hopes is that we have the resources in the future to expand Brenda's program, that we can really help organize and sponsor teams of neighborhood groups all around the city to take care of kind of these little plots of land, traffic islands, walk streets,
parks to help rewild and green Los Angeles.
So tell us about this wildflower meadow gone to seed here.
Well, this is Punch. This is our cat, and Punch loves the garden because he feels like he's in the savannah, and he kind of like stalks and hangs out in the plants. But what you're seeing is this is Clarkia, which is pretty much gone to seed. And after our program this weekend, I'm gonna cut these down and harvest the seeds and then sprinkle them around. There's this forlorn walk, like I said, walk street, and they did really well. The Clarkias over there did really well this year because of the rains. And we have the end of the poppies. Those are our Catalina cherries. They drop, and like I said, the birds eat them and they drop the seeds, and we have lots of Catalina cherries. And then this is obviously the poppies. And I'm gathering the seeds. Jenny Arnold, our seed program director, told me to put the seed pods in a paper bag and let them dry, and then they pop open in the bag, and that's how I collect my poppy seeds. This is Anacapa Morning Glory. That's Dan's favorites.
Nice, very nice. And now we're going to their parking lot because DJ and Dan have a former medical building. They have a parking lot behind their property, and it's adjacent to a homeless healthcare center. So it is such an extremely urban site. Tell us what you're doing here in the parking lot. Oh, wait, we lost your audio.
Sorry. So this is our parking lot, and this is a project that I've been working on for many years. This was all paved over, and I punched holes in the pavement, and then these are the deer grass that I propagated and then dropped in, and these are also the lemonade berries, the white sage that have all grown up here on our property. And the yellow flowers are the desert marigold that Evan was talking about earlier. And I love desert marigold because they do not require any water, and they bloom forever, and they make a perfect, I just love the border. And then you just kind of I collect the seeds and sprinkle them around, and you'll have many, many more the coming year. So yeah, this is our latest project. Dan and I have been by hand pulling up. We pulled up the asphalt and put it in dumpsters, and we have a truck coming tomorrow, and they're going to put down stone, pea gravel, so that'll help us reduce our water runoff. And then on the other side of the parking lot, his dream is where these cars are parked, we're going to be putting in an orchard.
Wow.
With figs and citrus, and I'm hoping that we'll have natives. I don't know how the natives what we'll put here. If anybody has any ideas of what to intermingle with citrus and fruit trees, what natives would go really well, I'd appreciate any ideas. So
Let's
this is our
get good comments on that in the comment section.
Yeah. So this is our urban landscape.
Well, thank you for showing us. And so, DJ, I wanted to end with just talking a bit more about the very special work that you do as board president for Theodore Payne Foundation, especially, during this wild ride through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're thinking about, what you're focusing on.
Right. So 2020 is going to be a very exciting year. We have a new executive director coming in Evan in February. 2020 is also the 60th anniversary of Theodore Payne Foundation. It's a nonprofit that's been around for many generations, and it's seen LA change over the decades, and we were going to be celebrating that. Then, of course, we all got hit by coronavirus, and as Brenda said, we had to immediately shut down our volunteer program. We shut down our K through 12 education, our adult education, our outreach. We had to shut down our nursery at one of the most important times of the year in terms of plant sales. And then as you know, we shut down our garden tour, which is one of our biggest fundraisers. I think, you know, Theodore Payne, we talk about gardening for resilience or planting for resilience. Well, I think we have a very resilient organization, a very agile. And I think one of the key themes that we've is agility and innovation. And it's, I think, the brilliant and fast moving and creative work like that Margaret, you and Philip have done to put our garden tour online. Now we have Poppy Hour. Scott Scher we have our classes online now, some of our classes. Our horticulture team got our plant sales online with our contactless pre-order and pickup service. Working with our key board members, Evan applied for a PPP loan from the federal government, backed by the federal government, which we received. That's helped us keep our staff engaged. We've also used the resources to make important new innovations. One, pretty soon you'll be seeing that we're going to have a really nice e-commerce platform that you can buy plants online. When you return to the nursery later, when we're able to open the nursery, we're also building a new kiosk in the nursery that'll really make buying plants and looking at our shop items much more enjoyable, and it will be much safer from a public health perspective and flow. So there's a lot of innovation going on, and that's really exciting. I think one other point, just as a board member, that's very important, is that we're responsible for taking care of the financial health of the organization. Theodore Payne Foundation has been around for 60 years, and our goal is for it to be around for 60 more years. So a key element of that is making sure we have the resources. We don't know what the next year is going to look like, and in terms of the pandemic and in terms of the financial condition of our community, and so we've had to build our cash reserves, which is very important. And we have an amazing community of members. We've had over 100 people donate money to make significant contributions, over $100,000 to help get us through this time. So we have resources to literally get through this drought. And I thank all of you that are watching and your interest and your support, and we will continue to rely and need your support in the coming months. So I ask for you to consider making a donation if you haven't already. This is just something that is very important for us as board members. We couldn't have TPF 60 celebrations here or anywhere in the city, or we were hoping to host an event here. I'm hoping that we'll have TPF 61 next year and we can invite you to our garden in Filipino Town. Thank you.
I really look forward to that, DJ. Thank you so much, DJ and Dan, for showing us your wonderful garden and all that you've shared and all that you do for Theodore Payne Foundation as a super volunteer board president. And yeah, I hope we can have some kind of Poppy Hour fiesta in your garden in the future when it's safe. It's definitely something to look forward to. So thank you both so much. And let's keep moving on. We have a next segment here. Evan, will you please tell us who you're speaking with?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, DJ and Dan, for sharing your wonderful garden. And thank you for all the work, DJ, that you have done to keep TPF operating during this time, which has been really crazy. It's been insane for me to start basically a month before Corona hit. And we've been busy, but I'm very proud of the team. I'm very proud of the community for stepping up financially in the way that DJ just mentioned, which has been crucial for us. And then getting the loan to the CARES Act is allowing us to basically pivot the whole business so that we can operate safely, as DJ mentioned. So many thanks to the staff, to the community, to the board. It's really been a heavy lift on everyone's part. And okay, so let's pivot back to water. This is such an interesting topic. I'm in no way an expert on water, so we had to bring in some of the real experts here. As we mentioned, it's a precious commodity in Southern California. And so I want to start with Krista Reger, who is from the Metropolitan. She's on the water efficiency team at the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. And Krista, are you here with me?
I am, thank you.
Yeah, welcome. So the first thing I want to ask is just sort of an overview, Krista, because I know Metropolitan Water District is a water supplier, but you're fighting really hard to have people use less water. So why should people in Southern California use less water from the supply side perspective?
It's a good question. We do get that question a lot. It does seem counterintuitive for a company that sells water to tell people to use less water. But there are a lot of really good reasons for that. One is that we can only sell the water that's available and make sure that there's enough available for us, for agricultural uses, obviously for the residents of Northern California, Central California, and of course, most importantly, for wildlife and the environment. And so we all have to use water efficiently in order to make sure that there is enough to go around and that all of our resources are covered. So as a wholesaler, we're very interested in making sure that the companies that we sell water to, who then sell water to the customers, are encouraging, just as we are, everybody to use less water so that we have enough into future years, particularly in a drought, especially.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we of course want to follow any of the government regulations and mandates. You know, we had the governor's mandate right during the drought to make water conservation a way of life. And there are regulations that go along with that wholesalers like us and retail water agencies as well have to follow. And so that is a big driver for us to show that we are good stewards of the environment, good stewards of this resource, and we're going to continue that way.
Excellent. Well, it's good to know that the people who are moving water around at the highest scale and the highest level are trying to conserve it, because there's a lot of people who live in Southern California and we need to utilize every last drop. So as I sip this water here tonight, and you know, turn on the tap, turn on my sprinkler system, water the plants in the nursery, I think for a lot of us, we don't necessarily think what is actually going on behind all this. It's just sort of like, here's the water, here it is. That's obviously not the case. So in a really quick overview, because we're a little short on time, how is water getting down here to Southern California? Where is the key supplies for MWD?
Good question. Yeah, so most people don't really think about where their water comes from. And when you turn on the tap, you're not purchasing water from Metropolitan. As I said, we're a wholesaler. So we sell water to retail water agencies who then in turn sell it to their individual customers. So good example of that, obviously Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is one of our customers that purchases water from us. So the water that we import comes from two main places. First one is from Northern California through the State Water Project. So that's water that goes from Lake Oroville down through the Sacramento and the San Joaquin rivers, usually through the Sacramento Bay Delta, and then down into Southern California, or into our treatment facilities before we distribute it to the water agencies. The other place that we get our imported water is the Colorado River through our Colorado River aqueduct. And there's a balancing act that we do between the amount of water we take from Northern California and the amount that we take from the river, from the Colorado River, to make sure that both of those resources are healthy and that we can continue to provide. And of course, many of the agencies that purchase water from us, we support them in their local supply development. So many of them have groundwater, they have other local recycled water or desalination projects. And we're heavily in support of those financially or whatever other resources we might be able to provide.
Yeah, so there's, for those history buffs out there, the story of Los Angeles is the story of moving water. It didn't become really a city that, that San Francisco was way bigger until we got the California aqueduct and we're bringing water into the city of Los Angeles. So this is so important. And of course, a lot of the water is not getting consumed, not growing crops, not used to, keep ourselves clean. It's getting put on the landscape to grow plants and often ornamental plants. So Krista, I'm going to ask a two-part question here. Roughly what percentage of water in Southern California is going to maintaining landscapes? And knowing that we just have gone through these years of drought, and there were all the radios ads were talking about conserving water and converting to drought tolerant native landscapes. How are we doing with that? Have we improved at all since the drought happened?
Great question. So the amount of water that we use in our outdoor landscapes was higher before the drought. The average is anywhere from 40 to the high end being 70%. And I would say now we're closer to the 40 to 50% outdoor landscaping, but still some high sides and 60% depending on where you are and what your landscape looks like. We did see tremendous success during the drought from those campaigns, asking people to use less water, explaining how important this resource was. We were so grateful that everybody came together, Southern California came together and really did heed the call to use less water. And the great thing is that even though the drought is past us, we are still seeing people using water more efficiently. The message didn't just get through, it stuck. And we're so grateful for that, because that allows us to save water, conserve it. We have more in our reservoirs now, so that should another drought come along, we have more supply available, and we'll be in a little bit better shape than possibly were during the last drought. So we're very excited to see that people have really started to take water efficiency to heart down here in Southern California.
That is awesome. That's so great to hear. Of course, the drought tolerant landscape discussion is a nuanced one, and not all drought tolerant landscapes are created equal. And maybe we'll talk about that towards the end of the conversation. But I thank you so much for joining us, Krista. We'll have more to discuss later. But I want to bring in our next expert on water, who is Kathy Chavez-Morris. She is an environmental specialist with the water and water conservation policy with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Kathy, are you here with me?
I am. Thank you for
good.
having us. We're really happy to be a sponsor of Poppy Hour.
Yes, thank you for sponsoring us, and thank you for being here tonight. So we were just talking about landscapes, what a significant portion of our water consumption is coming through landscapes. And there's the big green monster out there, the lawn. So
Great.
Why do people love lawns so much? What is it with lawns?
That's a really good question. And we did, to some extent, cover that in a video, which I will post after this conversation. We have some videos online on our YouTube webpage that talk about how to remove turf. And one of the very first videos tackles that subject. And it really does come, it's a very European aristocrat type of value, right? When you think about, for instance, Versailles in France, one of the main features there is the Great Lawn, right? It was this huge manicured space, lawn, yard that King Louis put in, right? And at a time when land was used for agricultural purposes, right? That really was the essential use for that. That's how most people survived. To be able to use land for ornamental purposes really did say that you had, achieved something. You could use that space to recreate rather than work. And that really is kind of the birth of that value system. Now, when you kind of fast forward to the 1950s and 1960s, post World War II, you also see that there is this kind of cookie cutter kind of type of style of residential homes that are put in, right? And all of them typically have two very focused focal points, right? The garage for cars, and then the yard, a very nice, well-manicured yard. And one of the things I will say is that since the 1970s, though, Angelenos have really kind of changed that value system. 1970s were when we first started to implement our first conservation programs. And we're really proud of the fact that our water use, despite the fact that our population has increased significantly, it has been relatively flat. It hasn't increased that much. So that speaks volumes to the fact that Angelenos very early on recognized the value of conservation, the value of water. And that's further extended into a lot of the local goals that we are working towards now into 2035, 2050, as a result of the Green New Deal that Mayor Garcetti has issued.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And two kind of positive stories that we've, in the last few years, done well, and then even in the longer time frame have kind of shifted away from the lawn as the all-encompassing thing. But I know the lawns are still popular, and I've got a 3-year-old. I get it. You want your space for your kid to run around, and a little space is okay, but those Versailles style expansive manor type lawns are kind of weird in LA. So I hope that Theodore Payne Foundation and our partners and the community who's watching right now can all join with us to basically buck the trend even further than it already has, to the point where if the most beautiful thing you can do and the coolest, most trendy thing you can do with your landscape is to rebuild nature and have hummingbirds flitting around your garden and have butterflies and insects and wildlife.
Right. Well, we talked about that the idea of having people, travel long distances to go to the poppy reserve to take pictures, is kind of indicative of the fact that people aren't necessarily thinking of their front yard, this is my front yard, as being a destination, right, for themselves. And this all was grass when we first purchased it. And we took out all of the front yard. We took out all of the parkway. We're on a corner because we, my husband and my husband grew up in Massachusetts as well. And so he grew up with lots of, grassy area and didn't have to worry so much about water conservation growing up. But we had a conversation and said, really, how much of this turf are we actually going to use? We're not planning on hanging out in the parkway and barbecuing or having friends over and, relaxing on that area. Even in the front yard, we typically, since we've got small children, we're not going to, be lingering or playing with balls out in the front yard. It would probably be in the back. And so we decided to go ahead and take all the grass out. And that's something that a lot of Angelenos are starting to recognize is a great way to save on their water use and to lower their water bills and to really make a huge dent in the amount of water that they're consuming. Taking out that water thirsty grass, just identifying what's underutilized, keeping what you need. Because if you've got small children, like I do, we've got space in the back for them to use the grass. But we took out everything else that would have just been consuming water and costing us a pretty penny at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm in the process of doing that in my house as well. Like my front yard is being converted. So Kathy, I know that a lot of our viewership is in LA. We're here in Sun Valley, part of LA, LADWP clients. What is there anything specific about water consumption or use, or anything that we should know as members of the LADWP service area?
So I think, we just want to thank all of our customers for doing their part, again, all the way back to 1970s. And most recently through the drought, Angelenos have really made a huge dent. They've, changed their behavior. They've taken out a significant amount of turf over the last 5 years. It's been impressive, and we've really set the standard for the state. But with that, we realized there's still opportunity for us to continue. And so the mayor has issued the Green New Deal, and I did bring a little chart just to show you a little bit about kind of like where the water comes from. And as Krista was mentioning, they are the wholesaler for this area, and we do purchase water from them. Right now, we purchase about 49%. The rest of it is coming through the Los Angeles Aqueduct. That's where the next bulk of it's coming from. And then the remainder is coming from local water resources. So recycled water, groundwater, water conservation, right? Those and stormwater capture, which is another essential part of sustainable landscaping. But what our goals are through 2034, 2035 are to see that shift. And for a majority of the water that we are acquiring to come from our local water resources. So the Green New Deal states that we need to try to push those limits and reach up to 70% on that, okay? And then have some remainder through the Los Angeles Aqueduct, and then last having, depending on our good friends at Metropolitan for any additional water that we need. So those are our near-term goals, and we're excited to see how our customers use some of the programs and the rebates that are available to meet those. We've got a lot of great programs out there between our rebates that people can seek for turf replacement, our programming, such as the California Friendly Landscape training classes that we host through Metropolitan Water District, and our hands-on workshops, which we hope to resume again when we are not social distancing. Those are all great tools to help reduce your water use and to help the city meet those Green New Deal goals.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's great to know that LA Department of Water and Power and the Metropolitan Water District, excuse me, are so committed to reducing water consumption. I think of this from the perspective of a field botanist, which is the more water we can leave in the watersheds where it comes from, the better it is for those habitats too. So you can build habitat in the city of LA by using less water, and at the same time, wherever that water comes from the wild landscape, leave it there for the willows or whatever, you know, it's supporting out there, the cottonwoods, the birds, the animals that out most places. So it's a win-win. There's really nothing, no reason not to do it, in my opinion. Okay, so our final speaker I'll bring in for the night, and we're kind of rushing through this because this is a huge topic, and we'll have to go back to this because this is really interesting. It's really important stuff. Is third final speaker, Pam Berstler, who's the CEO of the Green Garden Group, and does a lot of education and advocacy relating to water conservation here in Southern California. Hi, Pam. Are you on with us?
I am. Hello,
Good.
Evan.
Hey there. And you're not muted. Good. Okay. Got the Zoom. Proper Zoom etiquette is always good. So we had an interesting conversation the other day talking about the landscape industry and how some of the things that are kind of baked into common practices, particularly in large municipal landscapes, places where smart controllers and irrigation is going on, are not really well suited to this new style. We might need to shift as an industry. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what those shifts might look like from an industry perspective.
Sure. I think the best part of that question is really stepping back just for a second and reminding everybody that the entire irrigation industry is based on a concept called evapotranspiration, which is the process by which, as we all know, the process by which plants take water from the soil and turn it into atmospheric water. And plants do that at a different rate. And it's driven primarily by solar radiation. So the more sun, sounds like Southern California, right? The more sun, the hotter it is, but especially the more direct the sun, the longer the days, the more the plants evapotranspire. And the entire industry's controller system has been based on this concept that there's a bell curve. Of course, days are longer, so plants must be evapotranspiring more. And when days get short, they're not evapotranspiring as much. And so as a result, we have an entire irrigation industry based on the idea that we have to irrigate in the summertime because plants are taking too much water out of the soil and they need to have that water replaced in the summertime. And of course, for the industry that's a turf industry, that's in Los Angeles, that's like 50 inches of water in a season that is having to be replaced per square foot. So it's a lot of water, more than 4 feet of water that has to be put on a turf situation. Now, you can replace plants or replace the turf with plants that are adapted to a more Mediterranean climate. And they have a similar bell curve. In other words, they need the water in the summertime, but definitely not as much. So instead of 50 inches a year, they're looking for like 20 inches a year. And that's a huge savings. So you can see why you would create incentives to take out turf and replace it with Mediterranean plants. But if you continue to have that irrigation practice and the irrigation controllers that are, geared toward that bell curve of irrigating in the summertime, you're still going to be putting a lot of water on the landscape in the summer. The cool thing about our Southern California adapted native plants is they don't want the water in the summertime. They actually have like a reverse curve where they're needing the water in the wintertime when we are usually getting our rains. And so they go to sleep. They have adaptations that allow them to rest in the summertime. This is a challenge for the irrigation industry because the entire system is based on the concept that the irrigation in the summer is the key. And now we're telling them, okay, we want to create gardens where we don't want to irrigate in the summertime. We need to be able to irrigate in the shoulder seasons of the spring if it's been a very dry winter, and in the fall when we've now made it through the long summer and things are waking up and getting ready to go. So I think that is probably the fundamental underlying concept that drives the irrigation industry and is in disharmony, if you will, with the idea of planting native plants.
Yeah, it's almost as if they've tried to kind of impose just a standard model to landscapes across the entire planet, which is insane because we all have different climates. And I like that you brought up Mediterranean climates. We're a Mediterranean climate in Southern California, one of 5 in the world. And, you know, it's great to have all natives, and many of you do have all natives in your garden. I think that's fantastic. But if you want to stick a Protea or a Banksia, these are amazing plants from South Africa and Australia, I won't judge. I mean, and the water requirements are the same. Just don't have a whole bunch of concrete and astroturf. That's not a good way to save water. You can have cool plants, wildlife habitat, beauty, interest, biodiversity. Pamela, thanks so much for joining. We're kind of short on time. We could talk for hours, but I want to end Poppy Hour, the panel discussion, as we always do, with a question to all our guests. And we'll go around, and I'll start with you, Pamela, since you didn't get a ton of time to talk, and I apologize for that. So the question tonight is, what can we do individually or collectively to reduce water consumption in Southern California without sacrificing beauty or biodiversity? So concrete and astroturf need not apply. Those are not solutions to the question tonight. Pamela, what is your change to reduce water consumption here in SoCal?
I think the most important thing that we can do to reduce water consumption in Southern California is to plant plants. Plants are actually water holders, plants that are adapted to our climate, and in particular the local native plants. The living roots cultivate a soil microbiome that changes the way the soil behaves and turns it into a giant sponge, so that when it does rain, we're able to hold on to that resource right here, right in place. And when we have that resource in place, then, you know, it's easy to keep a garden happy. And so planting plants rather than trying to figure out how to minimize the amount of planting is really the way to go. It is counterintuitive to the way many people who you know don't think of gardens as systems think, oh well, I need fewer plants and lots of gravel or lots of decomposed granite or something like that in order to keep things, you know, dry. And the reverse is true. We actually need to plant a lot more native plants so that we can hold the water in place.
Thank you. Plant more native plants. I love that that answer. That's a very, very good one. Krista, you're next up on my little Zoom grid here. So how would you approach this?
So, you know, as the regional water provider for the area, and we've been incentivizing people to convert their lawns into these beautiful, diverse landscapes that are very water efficient. And we understand how big our reach is. I mean, our service area is 6 counties and 19 million people. And so the messages that Metropolitan puts out have a really big reach. And so we're very conscious of the fact that we need to make sure that the message we're putting out is correct. And what I think the best way to promote water efficiency is to put in the work of actually changing the way people view beauty in their landscapes. And that is done through a lot of the messaging and the education and the resources that we try to provide, really making people understand that when you're looking out your window or walking down the street, green lawns are beautiful in their own right. And I think they're more utility than they are beauty personally. But that there is so much beauty to be had in a native landscape, in a water efficient, especially native landscape. And so I think that the big push collectively is for Southern California to come together and redefine what beautiful is in terms of landscaping.
Hear, hear. I love that one. I can add mine to that really quick. I think that we can find beauty in the dry summer. Just, you know, if you've ever gone hiking on the coast of Malibu in the summertime and things are kind of dried up, there's an inherent beauty there if you look for it. So dry can be beautiful. And Yeah, dry can be beautiful. That's my answer. Brenda, what do you think?
I think that normalizing and introducing legislation to use gray water would be a great solution. You can have riparian habitat in your home without using any additional laundry other than what water other than what you're using to do laundry. Legislation is what got us into lawns. Legislation is going to be what gets us out of that mindset.
Thank you. I just thought of a new slogan, dry as fly.
Oh!
Nobody uses fly anymore. That's really old.
You just dated yourself a bit.
Yeah.
But I understood it, so.
Yeah. Kathy, great. What are some things we can do here in Los Angeles to reduce water consumption?
Well, I think that Angelinos are off to a great start already because, since 2009, we have replaced 50 million square feet of turf. So that's really impressive. I think that there is still opportunity out there. I mean, we drive through the city all the time, and although all of my front yard is really mostly natives and California friendly plants, I still have neighbors around who have grass, but they come by and they ask me all the time about my plants. So I think really those of us who have made that conversion, reaching out to somebody else and encouraging them to do the same, sharing information about rebates that are available, especially our $3 square foot turf rebate that we offer through Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. We have great rebates for weather-based irrigation controllers. So if you do want to place your transformed sustainable garden on a drip irrigation system, you can do so and kind of take your mind off of it and just enjoy it and not have to worry about the watering portion because you've already timed it to be as efficient as possible. We also have rotating nozzles. So we talked a little bit about, if you do have turf, make sure that you're irrigating it efficiently. Put in a rotating nozzle. We offer rebates on that as well. And then we also have a whole, slew of a whole, buffet of rebates for indoor efficiency as well. Those are available all on our website at ladwp.com/save.
All right, save some money, everybody. Save water, save money.
Mm-hmm.
Philip. Hey, Philip.
Sorry, it's always fun to switch to yourself. You have to find yourself. Anyways, I think we can all really just, instead of seeing our landscapes as something that we kind of walk by every day and maybe it's green, maybe we notice if it starts to brown, actually really trying to get in touch with it. I think that if we were all more in touch with the plants that surround us, we would all be better people and we would use less water. I think that, I'm really inspired by examples of gardens like DJ and Dan's that exclusively hand water. And there's a certain kind of connection that I think those homeowners have to their gardens. And obviously that may not be accessible to everyone time-wise, but if you're able to do that, that's great. And at a minimum, try to just, try to be out there with your plants and see actually how much water they need instead of just kind of blindly watering them.
Yes. It's a good quarantine activity to just spend some quality time with your plants. Margaret, how would you conserve?
I just want to respond to Kathy's point that a buffet of rebates sounds really delicious. So thanks for putting it in that frame. So what I wanted to contribute was this concept. A few years ago, we had a garden on the garden tour. Isabelle Duvivier, who's an architect, and she had a giant water wheel constructed for her backyard. And she talked about the importance of making water visible. But it's something that really struck me. It, instead of treating water as an invisible commodity, rather to make it visible in our daily lives, so that we can really see it as a sacred and life-sustaining resource that it is. And so anything from rain chains to bioswales that fill up with water when it rains. I have a patio. I live in an apartment, and I have a pot that when it rains, I see how much water, gathers in that pot. And to me, that's a really important way of connecting with the water outside, and ultimately, saving it, treating it as a really precious resource.
Thanks, Margaret. So I see Dan just walked into DJ's frame, which is perfect. So I'd like to close out this conversation of how can we reduce water consumption without sacrificing beauty and biodiversity with the owners of the beautiful garden that we saw today. DJ and Dan, close us out on this question. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I want to pick up on what Philip was saying, is that I realized that, when you're hand watering a plant, you're kind of like standing over, you're kind of like observing it, and you're observing the bugs and the birds you're observing its growth. So you really get a kind of a very intimate experience with what's going on around you. And I think it is a really nice connection. I guess I would pick up on what Pam was talking about. And I would challenge people, if you've got a mature garden, turn your irrigation system off right now. Like May is a good time. I think, Pam said it right, is the plants actually want to go to sleep for a while. They want to take a break. And you can see how they do. And perhaps if you need to turn it back on a bit, perhaps in the fall, give it a shot and see what happens. Kind of let them coast a bit. It's kind of reminding, if you think about the pandemic, we've learned to do things with a lot less running around, a lot less activity, and maybe the plants could use a little bit less water as well. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists tonight, DJ, Dan, Krista, Pamela, Brenda, Kathy. You guys were fantastic. This is the second to last episode of the first season of Poppy Hour. So join us next week, not last week. Join us next week. I don't know why I put these on Friday afternoons. It's always like the end of the week. I'm just totally frazzled. But join us next week for the final Poppy Hour season 1. Margaret, who do we have next week?
Wow, we have such a great, so it's our final episode, and it's going to run a little long, probably, just FYI. And we'll have the Gottlieb Native Garden. Susan Gottlieb and Scott Logan will be telling us about what's happening in the Gottlieb Native Garden right now. They're also a sponsor of this first season of Poppy Hour. And then we will cook with Abe Sanchez of the Chia Cafe, which is a really cool group, Indigenous collective. It's going to be a great discussion. And then we'll end with Casey Schreiner of Modern Hiker and talk about what's happening on the trails at this time. So it's going to be a really nice way to round out the season. And please stick around right now. We can do a few minutes of a Zoom social. Is everyone up for that? Sounds good. Maybe we'll switch to a grid view.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Tune in next week. And yeah, from the people who've come up, any thoughts on water? Anybody? I see Holly is on, Brian, Andrew, Teresa, and Yvette, who are actually from the Metropolitan Water District.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evan. As Krista mentioned, we're just really pleased to be a sponsor of the Poppy Hour, and tonight's show was fantastic to really talk about, the importance of smart water management practices and programs like were highlighted tonight. It's wonderful to be a part of that solution. And as you know, we've talked about before in previous shows, the importance of educating and providing education, whether it's adult education or educating our youth on smart watering practices, outdoor conservation. And that's, key to Metropolitan, TDWP, as well as to Theater Payne. And happy Friday, Eddie. It's a holiday weekend.
Woo!
I know. Is a 3-day weekend like mean anything now? I was wondering that this afternoon. Everyone's like, it's a 3-day weekend. I'm like,
Well,
like
I'm with my theater pain backdrop here from the garden tour. Thank you very much, theater pain.
Nice, Yvette. I'm trying
Thank
to
you.
see if is that maybe Jay Shields' garden in Delray. I'm not sure. The Penstemon Globe Mallow garden. I'm trying to figure it out.
It may be. My son helped me select this particular garden, and we just thought it was just so beautiful, so many vibrant colors, and it's a happy garden, as well as a smart and water-wise garden.
Nice.
I see Teresa on as well. Teresa also works for MWD. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I think that's actually Philip's picture. We looked through a gallery of Philip's pictures, so thank you for that.
Happy to help.
Philip's contributed a lot of.
We did. I'm also using a Philip picture.
Brian, you had a good question that is now buried deep inside the chat. Would you be willing to bring it up? Because I can't quite remember it off the top of my head.
Well, one thing I've heard about was that when you do irrigation, there's requirements for the length of time that you're allowed to do it and how often you're allowed to do it. And if you go too high on that, you pay a higher rate for the water. Is that correct? And is there a way to adjust that so that people that have the native plants can do the deeper watering that they're supposed to do, like every other week or monthly or whatever it ends up to be?
So our rates have been tiered so that customers who have who are using water the most efficiently should be in the lower rate tiers. So if you are, and I'm sorry, it's kind of loud. Can you guys hear me? Somebody's using a lawn blower.
We can hear you.
Sorry, sorry. So the highest rate tiers are going to be individuals who've not made that effort to install native landscaping and to, are typically going to be people who have large, turf areas. They're irrigating that. It just got really loud all of a sudden. Sorry. So if you have native landscaping, if you've got California friendly landscaping on your property, then you should be within those lower areas. Additionally, I did put some information in the comments because I did see that comment that you made, and I wasn't sure if you were referring to the length of time that you can irrigate as well. If you're hand watering, then you can water any day of the week, and as long as you do it between you don't water between 9 and 4. So you should do it before 9 and after 4 p.m. so that you do not have any water loss due to evaporation. Sorry, it got really loud here.
Is drip irrigation exempt from that?
So if you go to the website, if you scroll into the chat, you'll see that drip irrigation is considered one of the lines in there. It says, watering with sprinklers is limited to one cycle of up to 8 minutes per station per watering day for standard sprinkler systems, or 2 15-minute cycles for watering days, per watering day for water conserving nozzle sprinkler systems. I'm not sure if you can hear me. There's somebody blowing something right here. I might have to go inside because it's really loud. But it's 2 15-minute cycles per watering day for water conserving nozzle sprinkler systems. So drip irrigation is going to be the most efficient. If that's what the question was. I'm sorry, it just got really loud.
I wanted to bring up a question about hand watering. So in my past life, I worked as a landscape designer, and I would constantly try to encourage clients to take on hand watering because I think it is actually, it's so efficient, and you connect with the plants, and you can just decide, as DJ was recommending, how not, you know, not to water after a certain point. But of course you do have to water those first couple of years while the plants are getting established. DJ, I'm wondering if you can talk more about that process of like how you got your plants established hand watering. And I know you're like a global consultant. You were flying around the world. You lead a really busy life. It's not like you just were in a pandemic and able to hand water all day, every day. So tell us like how you got your plants established when you were hand watering, and how we can convince more people to do it.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, you plant in the fall, so they get established during the cool season when they're getting rain and you don't have to irrigate it as much. You know, in the summer, you think, okay, I got to water maybe once every couple weeks, maybe depending on the plant. So you just make some time. Mulch is really important. You put lots of mulch around to keep the moisture in the ground. I just think of it as part of my visit time in the garden. I just build it in, just like, you know, you work out or you obviously have dinner. You know, there's just garden time, and I do allocate a lot of it to watering or enjoy that time. In part because we don't have irrigation, we also don't have a lot of weeds, so I don't spend a lot of time weeding, and so that frees it up. And like I said, you know, we visited Plant Cemetery, and sometimes, like you said, I go away and it's the summer, and I come back and the plants croak, and I'm like, oops, you know. But you also learn what plants don't need a lot of plants don't need a lot of water after the first year.
Is your plant cemetery haunted, DJ? You don't have to answer that. Yeah, hand watering is, I don't know. Does anyone else want to engage on that?
Yeah, this is Rick. When I put my landscape in, it was sort of like just one thing I didn't have to deal with was trying to figure out how to put in irrigation. I'm like, why? Because to me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this for 2 years. And I'm not going to use it again, really. So I just thought it's just a time and money savings just to completely eliminate that as something that you need to even consider. So it just seemed like an advantage to me. And the hand watering isn't that hard. Just need a hose doesn't totally kink up and become a huge pain. So I've always hand watered for 10 years.
Maybe drip is most helpful for edibles, like the veggie beds and the fruit trees and stuff that need it more year round.
I would be remiss if I didn't do a little plug for our classes at TPF, which include an irrigation class. And I believe we'll be moving the irrigation class online soon if it's not already posted. So if you really want to do a full exploration of irrigating native, that's the best way to learn with experts. So yeah, check our Eventbrite page for those class listings.
Eric, you have your hand up. Board member Eric Callow, did you want to say something?
Well, I think hand watering is wonderful if you have time and a small enough garden. Although I am concerned that watering by the seat of the pants ends up putting down more than you really know. And so I've attempted to use an objective system based on the water use classification for landscape species system, the WUCLs. And I'd be interested if our experts are familiar with that set of standards and whether they think it's accurate, and if we adhere to it, will it result in efficient use of water?
Pamela, have you worked with WUCLs?
Well, yes, WUCLs is the standard by which all irrigation systems are designed, or irrigation controllers are designed with a system very similar to WUCLs. I mean, one of the interesting things about it is, of course, it helps you to realize that plants that are adapted to our native climate are, requiring like 10% or 5% of the water that lawn requires. And I think that that's like one of the most profound things is that, people don't really understand. They put in these landscapes, but then they end up overwatering them because they think, well, it's less water than a lawn, but how much less? And in fact, it's, really small amount. But yeah, WUCalls is great. There's another thing called Slide, which has basically shown that pretty much all, it's like a regression analysis, and it shows that almost all plants that are adapted to the dry California climate really are, between like 20 and 30% of the water of lawns. And you don't need to get so specific about, each individual species of plant. But that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela.
It's a deep and
I'm actually taking an irrigation class right now through UCLA Extension, and it's been kind of funny seeing how they kind of don't even deal with native plants at all, because a native plant like in WUCalls will be like a 0.2 or a 0.3 or something if it's riparian, but the water that it's getting is coming from natural precipitation in winter, so it's not like water that you would be applying anyway. So it's kind of like, it's weird because we'll have an assignment to design a landscape, and I'll have to like not use native plants on purpose. Otherwise I wouldn't have anything to irrigate. So it's been kind of funny to see, but they do say like, oh, you should plant native plants. Obviously then we would be out of a job if there was nothing to irrigate.
I'm sorry, I'm actually
interesting. Thanks for that, Katie and Eric.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so this is a complicated subject. We could just barely scratch the surface, and it's an interesting one. So hopefully we can have more conversations about this topic in the future. It's late on a Friday afternoon. I'm sure you guys have places to go, or maybe not actually. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in this week. Next week, final episode of season 1. Many thanks to our guests tonight. See everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Be well. Take care. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.